So firstly, if you could just give a brief, where you are, number of years coaching, what you coach, just kind of like a brief,
Yep.
highlight reel of your coaching PE
Okay.
experience.
So I've been head of department for a few years, for 2 or 3 years, and now I've moved into an athletic director role at Bishop Mackenzie
Mhm.
in Malawi. I have been coaching. Well, I qualified in 2008, so it's about 16 years now. I've been coaching or teaching sport.
Mhm.
My main, well, I have to coach everything. I'd say my main sports I've coached this year has been basketball and netball, but
Mhm.
my traditional sports would be rugby and football. But yeah, I've coached team sports, individual sports. I've taught swimming, at a high level here.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, athletics. But yeah, so every single sport that's required, I've taught. But I'd say my speciality would be rugby and netball would be my two sports of choice.
Right on. This will be fun for my American classmates who are not
Yeah.
very familiar with either of those sports. Um, so then, would you say that sounds like it is from what we already talked about? Is sportsmanship an important part of your coaching philosophy, and why?
It is. I think that it's in everything that we do. We really try and make it implicit, like in terms of every single session.
Mhm.
Um, whether that's we do a lot of peer coaching as well, so that sportsmanship or caring nature or whatever you might want to call it, like thinking of others rather than just yourself. I
Mhm.
think that comes into like basically every session that I coach. There's always an element of of good sportsmanship in what we coach. Yeah, like I think we've got a sporting culture here at least now where it doesn't have to be explicit.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be like, right, okay, this is our aim, or we're not going to run onto the pitch and celebrate when the other team has just lost the final. Like our students know that because of the sporting culture that we've sort of created over the last 7, 8 years. It's very much a part and parcel of everyday life here that we look after others, we care for others,
Mhm.
we try and grow and better ourselves, but not at all costs.
Right. That's awesome. So stoked to be joining that environment. Um, if you could think of one event regarding good sportsmanship that sticks out the most from your coaching experiences.
You know, you know what? I was thinking about this earlier, and I don't know if this falls into it really, but one thing that stuck with me was when we went to Cape Town recently for the basketball competition,
Mhm.
and we weren't in the final. Our boys actually finished last and got beaten in every game, but they were still there at the end, cheering on, never jeering or booing, and the home team were booing and cheering the whole time for the opposition.
Mhm.
Then the home team won. Everyone came running onto the court. No one shook hands with the other team.
Mhm.
And I can remember thinking, like, this is awful. And then, without prompting or anything like that, I look up and all of our team, our boys and girls, had come onto the court and were picking the losing team up and shaking hands. So, although we weren't directly involved in that game, I
Mhm.
was like, yeah, that's what it's about for me. Is that when a coach doesn't have to keep reminding, like it's there, it's done now. Like they know how
Mhm.
to behave in and around a sports match, even if they're not the ones in the match. And
Right.
I thought that was lovely. That for me, like, sort of epitomizes what Bishop Mackenzie is about with our sportsmanship.
Oh, that sounds lovely. What a great bunch of kids
Yeah.
to have had that reaction in that moment. Um, and this sounds exactly like we were talking about a moment ago. Have you had issues with players where they had been reprimanded regarding unsportsmanship-like conduct, either during a practice or competition?
Yeah, look, I think it's nature as well, hey? Particularly in the age I coach, you've got a lot of testosterone flying around at 15, 16, 17. And I
Mhm.
think sometimes that will to win overshadows, uh, yeah, like a good decision
Mhm.
or clouds it. But of course, we've had issues, like I said, with that player who I talked about then. Like even on the weekend fixtures, there was some sort of the guy from the other team got red carded for shoving our player, and our player like reacted and turned round. So I said again straight to the coach, take him off. Like there needs to be a consequence, even for turning around and reacting. And look, I'm the worst person for it when I play sport. I am like I try and this is probably a question later about gamesmanship versus sportsmanship. There's always an edge depending on what level you're playing. Like I played semi-professional football or soccer, so you know at that level it was always how can I get an advantage, and it was almost like encouraged. Well, not almost, it was 100% encouraged for when I was a player.
Mhm.
So to try and coach completely differently to how I've been brought up and taught
Mhm.
is challenging sometimes. But yeah, I think with anything in life, any behaviour, you praise and promote good behaviour, and if there's a negative behaviour, you have to give a consequence, a fair and not over the top consequence. And I think subbing someone off there for 2 or 3 minutes,
Mhm.
um, to get their head straight and say, look, we need you back in the game, but I'm not going to play you if you're going to act in that way. I
Mhm.
think is a fair consequence. And then look, they don't want to be off; they want to be on the pitch, so they know that the only way they get to play
Mhm.
is if they don't talk to the ref or if they shake hands again. Then I think that's positive.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. Um, Kind of similar question. Have you dealt with unsportsmanlike issues on your teams? What were the consequences, penalties, etc.? And I know you
So
just kind of answered that question, but if you had anything you wanted to expand on.
So the only thing is like repetitiveness. I think is like we've got one player who constantly shouts at the ref or like will swear at the ref, and it's like I think then you start if you don't deal with that, you get a situation where not only you can get away with it, but other players look at that and think, okay, well, it's not being punished. It's not being like there's no consequence for it, so there's nothing wrong with it. So
Mm.
what we've done in that situation is, we've had obviously player meetings, we've had meetings with the parents as well, or coach and captain meeting,
Mm.
where we've let the player decide, like what the consequence should be. So, it's about sort of restorative justice sort of thing where we say, look, I know what I would give. I would say you're not allowed to play for the rest of the season, but I also understand that might be too harsh.
Mm.
So you tell me if it happens again, what you think a fair step is. And quite often they're harsh on themselves and they're like, yeah, I should have a 3 game ban or a 2 game ban or something. So then they live by their own rules. So we found that that's been really helpful, getting the captain involved,
Mhm.
and letting the player set his own consequence
Mhm.
for a behaviour that we didn't want.
Nice. I love that because it's forcing them, not forcing, but like it's getting them to own the bad choice they made, but also own the process of improving and not
Absolutely.
repeating that process. That's really cool. Um, are you familiar with the term gamesmanship? We've already talked about this. You're familiar with the term gamesmanship. How do you, I guess I'll kind of modify this question then. How do you, if you were talking to your team, your rugby team, and you were trying to, say, look, like we're not trying to emphasize gamesmanship, or just you're outlining what it is to them, how would you explain that to the kids?
So that it okay. So here's where it gets tricky. So from my rugby academy to my school coaching are two very different coaches. As in, I'm coaching both, but how I approach both would be, I mean, a curriculum lesson versus an after-school club versus my rugby academy would be three very different versions of myself.
Mhm.
Curriculum, all inclusion, no gamesmanship at all, 100% support, caring, peer coaching. Let's
Mhm.
get as many, positive outcomes as possible.
Mhm.
Uh, After school would still be very much on the sportsmanship side, no gamesmanship. In my rugby academy, look, I won't lie, there is definitely gamesmanship. I wouldn't say taught,
Mhm.
like I would never do a drill that would focus on gamesmanship or cheating of an aspect, but there is 100% an acknowledgement that okay, we know that within rugby, let's say you don't roll the ball in straight into the scrum.
Mhm.
Like it happens on every single rugby international match that you see on TV at every single level. You'll
Mhm.
see the team roll it to their side. And our kids are almost too polite, where they'll roll it straight down the middle, and then it's a contestable ball. So
Okay.
the official rule there is that it has to be rolled in straight to make it contestable, but no one international all the way down does that. So if I look at myself there, then 100% I'm teaching gamesmanship because I'm saying that why are we being so nice? You roll it straight out of our scrum so we get the ball.
Mhm.
So I think it depends on the level you coach.
Mhm.
Even with this football tournament at the weekend, I heard one of our coaches saying that you had to be 5 meters back from the ball,
Mhm.
was the 7-a-side rule, and he was telling them no, go 3 meters, 2 meters, and see what you get away with. So
Mhm.
again, it's I think the barrier or the line would definitely come where anything became dangerous,
Okay. Yeah.
or yeah, like I don't know if you're gonna yeah, I think danger would probably be the main factor. But yeah, there's definitely small bits of gamesmanship that I've seen coaches do at a higher level. But it's not something like I said that would be explicit that we would actively encourage. It's more like small tweaks to the rules that we think everyone's going to be doing, so
Right.
that we should.
Okay. Gotcha.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Had to set a power cord out for somebody in the family. um, yeah, no, I get that. That the how you emphasize it changes based on the audience and the level of the sport. Um, it's almost like it starts black and white when you're teaching ninth graders rugby, within the
Yeah,
MY context. But as you move up to elite competition, it gets grayer.
yeah, 100%.
So yeah, we keep like tackling three questions at once, which is great. Um, so would you say that gamesmanship is taking advantage of the rules or cheating? Or do you feel that any advantage gained is ethical?
I think it is taking advantage of it. I don't think it's cheaper. So I listened to a really interesting podcast today on. I if you've not listened to it, you should. The Real Science of Sports podcast, and
Yep.
it's two South Africans. And I was listening to that today about the rugby law changes, and they were saying that basically they were in a room and it was all the top rugby officials, coaches, and they were coming up with how to make it a better spectacle. And they were saying that one of the problems is that we get a slow ruck. So here's a solution. And then as soon as he said it, three other coaches said, well, if you're going to do that, then I'm just going to do this, you know. And straight away, you're adapting how you're playing to the rule. So I
Mhm.
think where it becomes cheating is if you're breaking a rule outright and and there's a big advantage to be gained.
Okay.
Whereas I think with something like I said, rolling the ball in, where everyone's doing that until it, but then look, as soon as it gets picked up on and it starts getting picked up on by international referees, our local referees, then we'll change how. Like I think you only ever play with what the current rules are. So I don't necessarily think it's cheating, but I think it can be. Depends on. I think it completely depends on the context and what rules. Like let's take if it was a soccer match and it's the 88th minute and our defender handballs it
Mhm.
off the line, get the red card but save the goal because our goalkeeper might take the penalty. I don't know, like is that game? I, it's
Well,
not cheating.
Maradona got away with it, so
Exactly, and like Luis Suarez for Europe, like you see what I mean? Like it's a real tricky question because
mhm.
I don't want to sit there and say I don't think it's cheating because I think there's a lot of aspects where it can be, but I also think whenever you have a competitive situation,
Mhm.
you're going to get coaches like myself who will look at a rule and say, okay, well, how can I use that? What's the area here where I can get a slight advantage?
Mhm. Right.
You know?
No, I get you for sure. All right, changing gears a bit here. Do you utilize a positive strategy regarding diversity on your teams, be it religion, gender, race, economics? And if you could give an example, if you do, strategy use.
Um, yeah, I mean, look, so we're quite lucky at Bishop Mackenzie. We have a wide range of religions, a wide range of races. Um, I would say that we're a very, very inclusive school. So some of the strategies that we do in terms of making sure that we are inclusive, which therefore means that everyone can join, no matter race, religion. We're very mindful of madrasa. So in Malawi, all of our children do madrasa at 2 o'clock. So we try and put on different times throughout the week um, for the clubs. We try and all of our clubs are free, so we don't charge anything, so that then economic status doesn't come into it.
Mhm.
We make sure that they're open to everyone. So we do have like a squad session, but that would be an extra session. Everyone is welcome to, like, we have open football, and everyone in the school can come to that.
Mhm.
So we don't put any barriers on our after school program. In terms of like the rugby academy and my coaching there, obviously that we have the Bishop Mackenzie students who pay, and then they subsidise
Mhm.
basically for local Malawans who would never be able to afford it. So what
Okay.
we do there is we are very mindful of their culture. So a lot of them have chores and market responsibilities, so that we then make sure that we do it on a Saturday, not a Sunday. And then we pay for all their transport from the money that we get from our more financially wealthy students.
Mhm.
In terms of like things like food, we do group drives and stuff to make sure that everyone feels that, yeah, and then we give them out. So we try and be as open, welcoming, and friendly as possible without putting any barriers in place. Like our biggest thing, and my biggest thing when I came to the school was, first and foremost, we want to create a culture that everyone just loves playing sport. Um, Winning and that will come later. Like, the kids care about that. We don't care about that. We care that we can get as many people playing sport and a range of sports, so that when they finish college,
Mhm.
they'll maybe continue one, or that at least they see the value in it and understand that it's not
Mhm.
just about, I don't know, physical appearance, or there's a lot more to be gained in terms of social aspects and mental aspects and self confidence or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
So yeah, we really try and push that our clubs are as open as possible. There's no club that we run which is only for a certain group. Like if we're going to do football, it's football for everyone. And we
Mhm.
might split that up, age group, gender, blah, blah, blah. But it's never like, okay, well, we're only going to put on netball for girls, like, or rugby for boys. Like our girls rugby is our number one sport in school.
Mhm. Nice. Um, yeah, I like that. When I first started out in PE, I was much bigger on the like emphasizing fitness and strength and conditioning, because I was like, this is what kids will use after college and later in life. And then I kind of slowly realized, like, no, the greatest exposure to the greatest variety of moving, like,
Yeah,
will any, like, the greater opportunities you can give kids to enjoy moving, whether it's
absolutely.
netball, swimming, deadlifting, powerlifting, whatever. Like, you just, it's like the subjects we teach, right? You want to expose them to everything so that they can find that interest. And yeah, maybe at the end of the day, it does become Zumba classes when they're in their 20s or 30s, but like they might have discovered they like moving through netball. And
100%.
that
And
led
we
to,
do a lot of that strength and conditioning in grade 10, 11, 12. Like that's where we sort of push more on that. And we say up to that point, you go and do it's like with a triathlon, like you said. Like I'm not going to get grade 10, 12, 11, interested in it now. I've got to get them interested younger and early. And like you said, it's that interest in moving. You just saying, right, okay, get in the water and swim. You can stop. You can use a noodle. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be strict rules. Just go in, swim, and do one. And then next year you'll do it again. And
right.
the following year you'll say, right, I'm going to make it a bit harder and do the sprint version, not the mini,
Mhm.
because I can do that. That is our philosophy. Get people enjoying sport.
Yeah, love it, love it, love it. Um, have you ever had to deal with any diversity issues with your team members, such as players not accepting teammates due to gender identification, racial background, any of those sort of issues?
Um, I'd say there's a couple here, which is definitely. I was actually speaking about this to someone the other day about it's more cultural, particularly with Muslim women, of culturally here they they being Muslim girls shouldn't be playing sport. That's I'd say maybe a view that was 6, 7, 8 years ago. I found like loads of emails on my laptop the other day of like rugby convincing letter, netball convincing letter, where I'd sent to these parents saying, like your daughter's great, she really loves it, and just let her play. Like it doesn't mean that she's not like a good Muslim because of it, Whereas that was, I'd say maybe that was sort of one issue I had to deal with, but we don't get that now. The culture's changed. And then the only other one that comes to mind is that a few years ago we had a non-binary student. And I wouldn't say it was our school accepted them very well. We built like a non-binary toilet straight away. It's the first thing, but like we're also in a country where being gay is illegal. Like we have to get real about where we are, and it was awkward conversations with that individual about, we accept you, we want you to play, but you need to understand that you can't go and compete. So biologically born female, and they wanted to compete in the male category, and we were just like, you need to understand that can't happen. Like culturally, if you go up into a local Malawian school, like the abuse that you're likely to get is going to be big. Like, and we, as a safeguarding issue, I'm not comfortable putting you in that situation. However, if you want to play on the girls' team, we'd love to have you. They chose not to participate. But that was obviously I wouldn't say it's our school or our students not accepting, but I'd say that's Malawi or a culture. It's realism of where we are and what the beliefs are here.
No, I get that. Yeah, we not quite that same issue, but that was in Korea. There was issues regarding gender as well with female participation in sports, and also a similar thing. We had to, because it was a founding school too, so it was like a lot of these kids' first time attending an international school, and so we had lots of those email templates to get parents on board. But then after about 2 or 3 years, we realized we weren't sending them anymore, which was pretty cool. All right, last question. Do you address diversity acceptance in your preseason, and do you feel it is a necessary element in your coaching responsibilities?
Again, I think most of it is implicit. What we do, like the biggest example, I think, would be the diversity of economic and class structure within the rugby academy.
Okay.
We have half of us are Bishop Mackenzie, incredibly affluent, born with every opportunity and bit of luck that you can have, and then you've got 50% from rural village in Malawi, no electricity, very few clothes, can't afford, living off a land. And I think it's mindful that I speak to I need to speak to my affluent players and just sort of say, how can we make sure, how can we bridge this gap, and how can we make sure that they're not feeling awkward, you're not feeling like, because we're at the end of the day, we're playing sport, and we care about our rugby academy, we care about our rugby academy winning games and getting better. So how can we do that together? So there's things like, when they bring snacks or food or electrolyte drinks in for game days and training, we make sure that we have our captains responsible for bringing enough in so that they being the rural local Malawians have enough or have access to that. It's like I said about the boots, and I say, look, what I want to do is everyone who's playing for the academy has to bring in a spare pair of boots for our scholarship players to train in. I'm not having a scholarship player play barefoot. Straight away, it then becomes us and them, and I don't want that. So I definitely think again, look, Bishop Mackenzie, not so much, because a lot of, we've got different cultures for sure, but I'd say a lot of it, at least in terms of wealth and economic structure and what home life might be like, it's more similar, but in the academy, it's obviously vastly different.
Much more.
And that's only something that's come up in the last 2 years. We only started the scholarship program 2 years ago, so we're still learning. But I definitely learned from last year to this year. That's what we implemented this year, and it seemed to work a lot better. Things like making sure I say when we get into pairs or group work, or if I say right, get into fours, it's not bishop and scholarship players as separate groups. Like we're mixing two, so that we're all one team. We're all learning Chichewa together. They're learning a bit of English from us. We're learning Chichewa for what rugby terminology is in their language. So yeah, I think it's incredibly important to address if it's so diverse like that.
Right.
I think in other ways with Bishop, I don't think there's any need to address it because everyone's already so close and so tight, and it's such a like when you come, you'll see it's such a welcoming school. That I don't. Maybe I'm naive to it, but I don't really see those issues happening.
Okay, gotcha. Right on. Well, awesome, man. Thank you.
I suppose